Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Vice President and General Manager, Cybersecurity Services, Symantec, Samir Kapuria.
Good morning. This is amazing. Look at this. We got tens of thousands of cybersecurity professionals, thinkers, doers, all descending on one city at the same time. If we think about that, we're all here to talk about the future of cybersecurity. And when I was thinking about this theme, Now Matters, I realized that there's a question behind it. Why does now matter? And it matters because the pace of innovation and transformation across every industry, every piece of information, every device, the office, the home, it's all transforming so rapidly. And with it, our surface area, what we have to protect and defend, is expanding at equal pace. And so as I started exploring this, I was on a flight from Tokyo to Boston, and sometimes you get inspiration in the weirdest places. I started doodling and thinking about what will we talk about today. I noticed the guy sitting next to me is a really famous science fiction writer. I said, oh, this poor guy's stuck with me for 13 hours to get all of those cliffhangers I never understood from the 90s shows I used to watch answered. Told him, hey, I'm in the cybersecurity field. He said, hey, you guys are my biggest fan base, you techies, but you're also my biggest problem. At that point, I felt the energy change a little bit. I said, why is that? He's like, every time I write a new script, you make it real. You techies make it real. So I have to think about the shelf life of everything I write. And in that moment, I realized, representing all of you as an ambassador of technology, that we were going to get blamed for writer's block for an entire genre. So quick on my feet, I said, hey, well, seeing how you guys are moving from Mary Shelley and George Lucas to be more like Nostradamus, what's the next big thing tech takes away from sci-fi? Without missing a beat, he said, immortality. I said, wow. He's like, Samir, if you want to see the future, go watch this show called Altered Carbon. And just like Yoda, he put on his headphones and immersed himself in a deep meditation for the next 12 hours in his iPad. So he left me with another cliffhanger. I went home, spent some time with my family, had dinner, and I realized that I had this research on my mind. So I announced, listen, I gotta go do some work. I'm gonna go watch some Netflix and do research. No sooner did I utter those words till I realized that my kids are gonna be using that against me soon. So I watched Altered Carbon. I realized it's about a time where the consciousness can be digitized, where you download your consciousness and you put it in the cloud of the future. And when your body passes, you upload it to a new body. You think backups are tough now? Wait till this comes. But what it really meant, and what the thesis behind the whole story was, is that the lines between technology and humanity are being erased. And if we think about Altered Carbon, what it describes is how our brains have evolved over billions of years to perform some core functions. We learn and store our knowledge, we use our 5 senses to analyze things, and we take those inputs and we make decisions. And now if we think about technology, we've made technology to be a reflection of that. We create digital knowledge. And in cyber, we all know that we create a subsegment of information protection. So when that information gets created, stored, transferred, viewed, disseminated, we're there to protect it. And then the tech industry created analytics. AI and advanced analytics are out there right now, but they're an ecosystem to take those billions of sensors, fuse the data from that, and create an outcome. And we in cyber are looking at that from an integrity perspective. How do we make sure that end-to-end system is protected? And then when it came to decisions, we've taken all of that input, and now that the physical and technical world are colliding, we look at how do we protect the misuse and abuse of those autonomous decisions. And so where do we sit? We sit in the center of civilization between people, property, society, and government. And you know, a lot of speakers talk about we're a mission industry. I think at its core, our value is only recognized when others can bring their advancements in a safe manner to the planet. And that's why we're a mission, because we're part of something greater than ourselves. So I thought it was important to look at cyber more like a compass, not like a map. And as a compass, we get our insights from the direction other industries are going. So I first started with a place that we've borrowed a lot from, the defense sector. You know, everything from the OODA loop to the attack chain to the fog of war to Sun Tzu. That sounds like the greatest hits of cyber conferences. We've taken all of those models and we've applied them because we both share a mission of defending and protecting. But one place that caught my attention was technology on the seas. So a group in DARPA has been focused on this. Their mission was, how do they create naval observation capabilities with limited crew, limited budget, and a global remit that's expanding? Sound familiar? Their challenge was they needed to create a new force multiplier to deal with that expanding surface. So the idea they had was if they could create a robotic naval fleet that took the knowledge of naval patterns, ship identification, exploration maps, took the analytics to be able to think real time and fuse that data on the seas, and then move the decision-making to not be a drone, but something more autonomous, could they extend their fleet capabilities? Well, they made it real with the Sea Hunter. It's a 132-foot autonomous vehicle that circles the globe, and it changed the role of naval expertise. It moved it from the sea to the land. But it also changed something else. It moved the risk from kinetic to digital. And the questions that they had when I had the opportunity to speak with them, Samir, what does a denial of service do to these boats? Does it make it nothing more than bottles floating in the sea? What happens with a targeted attack? Do they go from synchronized sailing to bumper boats? What happens if misinformation is planted with our analytics? All these types of questions are the questions that we're going to have to answer as we see the ushering in of new scaling systems, not just in the Navy, but all around. Digital mutiny becomes more of a foreground. So moving from sea to land, I then went to where innovation thrives, the labs. And we've got so many collaborations with these labs. I love going in there. And I got exposed to so many examples of humanity and technology coming together and science at work. But one place that caught my attention was MIT Labs. They've got this project called Open Agriculture. Now, just to give you a little background, the population growth of the planet over the next few decades is going to surpass our ability to produce food. And so their mission was, how do we keep pace with food production? So what they ended up doing is comprising an idea commensurate to what we see with 3D printing. Their thought process was, if we could take all our knowledge around nutrition, around climate, around agricultural principles, fuse it together, use some advanced analytics, and be able to produce that food at the right time, at the right place, could we make a dent in the impending food crisis? And they did. Not too long ago, they took some lessons from us, and they created a food data center, a system that could be deployed all around the world to deserts, to natural disaster areas, to cities, and looking at the demographics of that city, produce food when it's needed in a hyper-localized fashion. Now, their risks change too, because rather than using the cloud in the sky, they're using the digital cloud to control robotics, systems and sensors that monitor the water, the gas, and the production. And in speaking with them around the risks that they're worried about when thinking about augmentation is, if we just look at the last few weeks, there have been attacks in power stations, water stations, certain communities have been held ransom. Are they ushering in a new era of cyber siege? So moving from there, I left scale, I left augmentation, and I went to that next level, when technology is being used to imitate human. And I had the opportunity to speak with an organization that's on an amazing mission. Unfortunately, 1 in 50 people lives with partial or full paralysis. And the team over at BrainGate is focused on a mission of literally changing lives. Their mission was, could they reverse paralysis? Now, their idea was if we could tap into the brain, extract the thought, use software to interpret that thought, and then conduct a physical action, we could jump this whole curve. Now, to help understand this, I had the privilege of learning about Bill Kochevar. He was a veteran from the Navy. In about 2006, he got into a bicycling accident that left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. But Bill was eager to help research that could make this possible and change more than just his life. Let's hear from Bill.
Well, it was amazing because I thought about moving my arm, and it did. I could move it in and out, up and down.
We've been able to take the electrical signals which represent his thoughts and use that to control stimulation of his arm and his hand.
We've bridged his spinal cord injury. For the first time, we've implanted brain recording electrodes in a person, and an FES system, functional electrical stimulation, has been implanted as well.
The participant also uses a mobile arm support, but that mobile arm support is also under cortical control.
I'm still wowed every time I do something amazing.
It provides a demonstration of feasibility so that advances that are needed to make this more clinically acceptable can be made.
We are just at the forefront of really understanding how the brain functions, how to take advantage of our knowledge, and could see exponential growth.
I'm always wanting them to do more. Seeing the possibility is one of the biggest goals. You know, yes, I'm injured, but it's not like my life stopped when I got injured.
As we look at the world and how it's changing around us, all of these innovations in scaling, augmenting, and imitating, they all had missions: to defend, to feed, to heal. And these become our missions in cybersecurity. But robotic naval ships, coding food, recording thought, those aren't evolutions, those are revolutions. It's important for us to realize that responsibility, because whenever there's a revolution like this, any industrial revolution has two questions. First is what is possible, and the second is what's at risk. And we've seen this replay from the first revolution, when the steam engine came in. What was possible? So many different applications, including the train. The train was like the internet of its time, right? It connected people, it allowed for new commerce, it sped up communication, but with it, crime followed. In fact, there was a great gold robbery in the 1800s where 200 pounds of gold were stolen. Now, this was professional thieves that were working with railroad folks, made wax copies of the key, and they exfiltrated all that gold. They did get caught, and this great granddaddy of the insider threat paved the way for private key protection and monitoring. And then from there, we transitioned over into the second revolution, electricity and mass production. And there was a lot of fear when this came out as well. In fact, the US President Benjamin Harrison was the first one to wire the White House, way before Nixon. And he was afraid of getting electrocuted. He literally had somebody turn the switches on and off for him. Now, I'm sure we could do a separate discussion just on presidents and their technology, but I'll leave that for another day. That said, as soon as electricity came into the forefront, people were stealing it. In fact, one customer, actually a few customers in New York, started stealing it from the Edison Electric Power Station. And the superintendent noticed this, And he sent a power surge right back the line to blow up the device on the other end. Now, a few things were observed at that security response. A, it was an attack back. B, it was a denial of service. And most importantly, it was a New York response. Wouldn't we like to do that with ransomware? And then we got into the third revolution, the one in which computers came into the picture, the era of electronics and information processing. We all remember the phreakers from the 70s hacking the phone systems, to the era of discovery with worms, to the Melissa virus, to the era of cybercrime with Conficker and Stuxnet. And we introduced new terms like hacktivists, people focused on digital anarchy, those 5 minutes of fame. We've got organized crime focused on monetary gain. We got nation states focused on controlling and replaying power. And our response has been everyone in this room. Our response has been the emergence of the cyber industry. But now we're about to enter the fourth industrial revolution. It's described by the convergence of biological, physical, and technical environments. We got to go into this eyes wide open because we have an opportunity to define our role in this space. As we think about that, we discuss scale and the way scale is changing and how we got to protect that. But truth be told, how do we use it? Is now the time that we start using scale in a different way? Is now the time that we create our force multiplier, just like the naval ships did? Is now the time that we scale our talent? Because we got that dearth of talent, and we've got an expanding remit. Is it time now to create digital security-defined robots, deployed as our sentinels, taking all of our intelligence, our analytics capabilities, our defense conditions, and extending our SOCs? We talked about augmentation and how we have to be prepared for ecosystem attacks, where manufacturing is localized. See, the thing with this whole generation is the speed of response has to be different. You can't have a biological attack or a physical attack and then send an IR team. You have to respond instantaneously to neutralize the speed and velocity of the attacker. So it's now the time for us to create self-defending, self-learning, self-healing platforms to speed up and neutralize that threat when it emerges. And then we talked about the way technology is imitating. I think this is going to be one of the most difficult areas because we're defining a new digital persona. Our identity is changing. We're allowing systems to do things on our behalf. And the new question that emerges around this is who made the action, a human or a machine? Who's responsible, a human or a machine? And we're moving from bits and bytes to lives and people with this. I think everyone in this room is going to play an important role of guardians of innovation, because the questions here aren't going to be what's possible, but what's right or wrong. And as we go to our digital civilization, it's important for us to realize that all of these changes are sitting on us. You know, for years we'd jump up and down, hey, you got to add security to the agenda. Hey, can we talk about security? Can you add that to that design? Well, now we are the agenda. And we got to take that responsibility very differently, because all of these different industries are relying on us to enable them, to allow them to usher in their next generation of advancements. And we're going to enable every industry. But the thing that I'll leave you with is at the end of the day, they're people attacking. They're people who are victims. They're people who are going to guide the future in security. But in a world full of technology, what is going to be scarce? Perspective, empathy, creativity, humor. Something that can only be done if we empower diversity and inclusion. Thank you.